Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from Zoobox, and today we're going to be talking about the recent released documentary film Happy Happy Joy Joy, the Ren and Stimpy story. It's a documentary that explores the rise and fall of the Ren and Stimpy show and its controversial creator, John Krikafafala. We'll call him John K. That's what everybody calls him, so we'll call him that too because we're cool. It's directed by Ron Cicero and Kimo Easterwood, written by Ron Cicero, and stars a bunch of people that were involved in the show. Too many to name, really. Other than John Kay himself, maybe Robin Bird. Maybe we should mention her. We'll talk about that at the end. So this show has an interesting legacy, an interesting history, and it's even become even more interesting as of more recent revelations about the creator of the show, John Kay, and his proclivities and his maybe pedophilic nature. It is, I guess it's not even really that debatable. He's definitely got some weird predatory thing with kids, and I was interested. One of the things I was interested in watching this thing. I was like, are they going to address this? Are they going to talk about it? And they do, much to the film's credit. Directly addresses it. Even interviews like the main accuser, I guess, of this. He was basically accused of child grooming through promise of mentorship. Kind of a weird thing. And we'll get into that maybe towards the end, because I want to talk about the documentary also, and I want to talk about the show itself, because this is one of these things. Do we engage in death of the creator? You know, I have this kind of problem all the time thinking about things that I like. You know, one of my all-time favorite horror movies is Rosemary's Baby, and Roman Polanski directed that. And if you don't know, Roman Polanski is a child rapist, and he was basically left America and did not return. Because he had done that. Went and lived in a place where they would not extradite one of their own. They would not extradite a citizen. And he had dual citizenship. So he went there and he hid out. Pretty wild shit. So yeah, it's something really to consider with art. And I guess maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But I was, when I had my kid, I kind of reinvested in animation. I kind of took personal inventory of the things that I grew up with, the things that I liked. I started thinking about them again. Because I think all parents have some sort of weird desire to see their kids enjoy the things that they enjoyed. It's like this vicarious thing. You want to relive the experience. Because you feel like if you can watch them enjoy it or get something from it, maybe you'll get a little of that juice too. Just like the vicarious nature of anything, right? And in doing so, I kind of pulled out my old DVDs of Ren and Stimpy. I bought the DVD set back when it first came out, and I would say, the mid-2000s, the early 2000s, the first and second season, a box set came out, and I bought it. And because even then, at that time, it had been years since I had watched the show, especially some of the episodes on that one, because it's from the first two seasons. The John K. years, as you come to find out later. And I just started watching them again. And I kind of grew in this real appreciation and respect just for the craft of animation in general. Not just in particular the television show itself, but the work that went into creating that show is impressive. And it's still impressive to this day. You go back and watch those old cartoons, and just the way they animate things or the way they communicate emotions and the subversive nature of it. The weird, almost preempting memes. And the way that people like Wojak. Something like Wojak. There's that face of that kind of NPC-looking blank-faced dude who's angry or crying or just blank-faced staring there. The Wojak. The crying Wojak. That's reminded me a lot of something that comes from, this Ren and Stimpy type of humor. And I was thinking about maybe that's why I respond so well to meme culture. Maybe that's why I think a lot of that stuff is funny. It's this heuristic, this shortcut to this part of your brain and you immediately get it. You understand it, and you see all the irony, all the layers right there in an instant. And Ren and Stimpy's got tons of that kind of stuff. It's all over the show. And it just found inventive ways to deal with very adult, very weird, dark things. And that's, this is one of these things I'm of two minds of, especially being a parent, is that this is clearly not made for children. It was on during children's primetime programming because that's where cartoons were. MTV had Liquid TV. They kind of had their own weird kind of indie animation stuff that they would put on, Ion Flux. Ion Flux, I think it's called, right? That was on there. Weird kind of, but that was just more sexually provocative. So that's why it was on at night during Liquid TV, and it was weird and violent and all that stuff. And then Ren and Stimpy, though, has the veneer of something that is like just goofy, Looney Tunes, kids cartoon, but it's really very subversive. And it's really talking about depression and mania and sex and child predators and all sorts of weird shit in there. There's also, it's just all over the cartoon. It's just, like I said, it's not really made for kids. And even the documentary kind of gets into this idea, this notion that like even the fan base of the cartoon were not kids, really. They were comic book nerds. Weirdos. Nerds. That's the kind of people that were into this shit. It was not like your afternoon kid show stuff, but it was a huge fucking show. It was like a cultural phenomenon. And they can't really get away from that. So it has this weird thing where it's like there's an underground of people that kind of understand it, and then there's like the mainstream success of the show. And as the show went on, and John Kay, notoriously difficult to work with, notoriously driven in a very specific direction. He's very particular about it. I mean, he was known apparently for like taking all of the elements of the show and like locking himself in the office and not coming out for like 18 hours as he like went over frame by frame, making sure everything was perfect. He even kind of said that he wished somebody would come in and just punch him in the face and take it because he just is that obsessive. But at some point in the second or third season, he basically gets fired from his own show. And his co-director, his co-showrunner takes over, and the show is kind of never the same. You can notice almost immediately the shift from when John Kay leaves, because John Kay brought this really unique, dark sensibility, this really manic sense, this almost like this need to express yourself, just exploding out of your pencil onto the piece of paper, and it is just as grotesque and messy and fucked up as a brain is, as a person is, right? And he got a team together that was able to help him with that, to facilitate this intention. And they were all the same. He said it's easy to find unique, interesting people. It's hard to find unique, interesting people that can put that on a piece of paper. So he was very selective. He was kind of a workhorse. And the show becomes kind of more what the mainstream maybe thought it was after a certain point. And it became immediately less special, less exclusive, you know. I'm not going to say that I totally got it. I just liked it when I was a kid because it was so weird. And I picked up on that subversive stuff, like pretty young. I was a pretty savvy kid. I was pretty media savvy. I watched a lot of movies. I read a lot of books. I was a little ahead of the curve with that stuff, even at 12, 13 years old. So a lot of it was pretty clear to me. And it just felt cool to be like, feel like you have some sort of secret thing. It's like when you're a kid and you find a band that none of your friends have heard of, and it becomes your favorite band. And you're like in a cool, exclusive club of people that like this band. I remember when I found the Pixies, I felt that way. Just because not everybody I knew liked it or was into it or had even heard of it. So it was cool to just have kind of my own little thing. And in Ren and Stimpy, I got a lot of that same juice from. And the documentary itself, I think, is really thoughtful. I think it's well made. It deals with some really dark stuff. It is not it's not unkind to John Kay, but it's also pretty fair to everybody in those situations. Even to him, he kind of gets his say. He definitely does. He just doesn't have much to say about some of these more negative aspects of his life story, of his legacy. He honestly just didn't seem like he really wanted to talk about a lot of it, which is, I guess, understandable or not. I don't know. Or maybe that was an editing decision. This is a documentary. This is a film. It's made into a film. So I don't know. I'm not sure about that. And as far as I feel about Death of the Author, well, I think one of the things that I would say Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy is successful at is that it shows you how much work and how many other team members are actually very integral to the show. While John Kay is the figurehead, he's the monolith, he's kind of the head honcho, A lot of other people's work and personality is all over that show, and I think the documentary, maybe even reflexively, maybe even a little defensively, makes the case that the show was much more than John Kay. So I guess don't throw away your copies of Ren and Stimpy just yet. And once it does get to the controversial stuff, once it does get into his, I guess, habits of grooming, there's one case that the documentary focuses on, which is the one where they interview this woman, Robin Bird, who used to write to John Kay when she was like 14. And he took an interest in her for some reason. She would send him videotapes, like talking to him, like vlog style, just like this, just talking directly to the camera, and he'd watch it. And so they had some weird relationship. He kind of makes the case like, oh, well, it was like it was an intellectual affair. But she ends up moving out with him when she's like 16, and she says it was miserable and she felt trapped and blah blah blah, and she probably did. I don't mean to say blah 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 is dismissive. I'm just saying you can formulate in your brain the kinds of things that he was grooming, controlling. They never talk about whether or not their relationship was ever sexual, only that they worked and lived together when she was 16. Honestly, it never gets into whether or not they had a sexual relationship. So I have no clue if this was just some weird control thing that he has. I don't know. He comes off as a relatively kind of unstable person. You can tell he's an intense personality. And I've listened to lots of podcasts in the past with him. And if you listen to the podcast with all those guys, like the voice actors of the era and stuff, they're all really fucking weird and wild guys. All of them. Even the other artists, the other Spumco artists, it kind of shows you that they're also they lived kind of a wild rock star life. A lot of that was facilitated by having this really intense, really kind of attached and weird fan base. Because the fan base from back in the day, like they thought they were seeing secret codes. Basically, they got it where everybody else didn't get it. Made them feel special, made them feel connected. I mean, these other artists were like, suddenly we were taking girls back to the studio to show them how things work at Spumco. Like, come on. I mean, they were kind of treated like rock stars in that little community. And that definitely looks like a contributing factor into kind of this ego of John Kay, for sure. Because he definitely is like an egomaniac, a narcissist, for sure, 100%. I don't think he's a sociopath, because I don't think he really cares what people think about him, but he was an intense guy, and all that stuff obviously fed into it. I mean, because he's worshipped as animation royalty up until these accusations came out like a couple years ago. I mean, John Kay was like always kind of put up on a pedestal as like the master artist, the master animation guy. He was the standard, he was the ideal. And he had integrity. He stood up for his beliefs. But in reality, he just was his refusal to not so much compromise, his refusal to make it work. He could have kept going, but he just didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how. He was young, brash, egotistical, and obviously got away with him. Got away from him, I suppose you could say. And the documentary kind of shows that whole sequence of events seems very honest about it. It doesn't seem like it's really picking sides. I could say that maybe it's picking sides when it comes to the allegations against him. I don't think they tried to make him look good. Like I said, like let him say his piece, and then it kind of seems like he's not very interested in getting too deep into it. But is that like a trick of editing? I don't know. I have no idea. I would say this, even superficially, the accusations against him are fucking weird. Okay, I'm not gonna make apologies for John Kay, because you have a 16-year-old girl come live with you and you're a single middle-aged man. There's obviously something wrong there. Obviously something going on. And then like everything else, like they kind of briefly mentioned like, oh well, after the fact. People are like, yeah, he used to talk about young girls when we were at parties and he'd get really drunk. I don't know. Who the fuck knows? But does that make me not like Ren and Stimpy? I don't know. Not really. honestly, I guess maybe I do believe a little bit in death of the author or whatnot. Um, and especially just because something like this is so collaborative, the nature of it is so collaborative, that him having his name on it is almost perfunctory. It's not the whole story, you know. It's in the same way that, I don't know, Kevin Feige's name is on every Marvel movie. Whether it really needs to be there or not, you know. He definitely was a steward. He definitely was in control of the tone, maybe the sense of humor, the aggressive nature of the show. He was always one trying to fuck with the censors, always trying to slip something in, always trying to get something by. And that definitely informs the tone and the direction of the show 100%. But there was obviously a lot more to it than just that. I think it would be really dismissive, I think, of all of the hard work and all of the other people involved and all of the other writers and all of the other directors that came and went during the show's history. I mean, honestly, without John Kay, Ren and Stimpy isn't very good. And I would say even when they tried to bring it back, they tried to bring it back, what, in the early 2000s? Ren and Stimpy adult cartoon show or something like that. I think it was on like VH1 or Spike TV. It was on Spike TV. They aired 3 episodes before it got canceled. They only finished 6, which I believe you can buy on DVD or whatever. I do not have that. I have the original show and all 5 seasons of that, but I don't have that one. I've never seen anything other than a few clips. But when he was allowed to do whatever he wanted, when he didn't have like kind of this challenge, the show was not very good as far as I understand. Because, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. When you're put up against the wall and you want to get something across, you want to communicate a message, but you only have a limited tool set to do it, you get very creative and you figure shit out. And when you don't have that, it's almost like you get lazy, you get apathetic. It's just ain't going to be the same, you know? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to bring it back again, but without his involvement, which doesn't seems like a waste of time to me. Because they make the case in the documentary itself, and I think a lot of the creators and stuff also make this, John Kay being one of them, is that it's not the idea, it's the artists, it's the writers, it's the people that put the effort into the stuff. It's not just the concept. You can't just take these characters and give them to anybody to make them work. It's very idiosyncratic. It's very specific to the process, you know? And, yeah, I mean, I guess that's another feather in John Kay's cap, because, I mean, he was a very pro-artist guy. He fought for these people. Like him or not, that's the truth, you know? But, I don't know. I really enjoyed the documentary. I don't know if you're going to really love it or get a ton out of it if you've never seen the show or if you're not familiar with Ren and Stimpy. I was already aware of a lot of this stuff, but it was still interesting and fun to watch it kind of put together for me. You know, it's not all these disparate pieces of information and forum threads and whatnot. So it was cool for that, and I did enjoy it. It's definitely one of the better kind of retrospective documentaries I've watched in a while. So, and I've watched a few. I haven't talked about them on these daily videos because sometimes, you know, I've watched some stuff, especially when I was sick. I just blew through a ton of stuff, and like half of it just, well, I didn't have anything to say. And some of those were documentaries, so. All right, anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a request for one of these daily videos, hit me up. Let me know. Drop a comment. All right, everybody. You have a great one.